I'm just gonna start with some high level stuff. So, chapter 10 was essentially about the being, the supreme being in everything. It's all pervasive, right? So this chapter is the reverse. This chapter is about everything being in that one. All right. So one thing is when you see everything and you feel like consciousness is pervading everything. Wherever you see, whatever you experience, you feel this vast ocean of consciousness, and that everything is consciousness, and everywhere you look, it's just consciousness. So that's one. That's what chapter 10 was about. How the eternal being, the supreme being, whether it's Ishwar or Brahman, that pervades everything. It is the transcendental aspect, the consciousness aspect, that is pervading, which is the immanent, the things that you experience. And it's not just what you experience physically, but it's the body, the emotions, the thoughts, intellect, and all the loks, all the dimensions, all of creation, not just the physical creation, but also the subtle aspects of creation. Everything that is creation or existence is pervaded by that one consciousness. Now, in this chapter, like I said, it's the reverse, right? So, this is about transcending duality, where you see everything within that one. So it is like you see the entire creation as a huge being, as one being, like you have a body. And in that body, you see everything, all these cells, all the organs, all the functions that are happening, the eating, the digesting, the excretion, the blood flow, the nerves, the organs, the blood pumping, the brain's firing neurons. I mean, the whole thing. So you can imagine seeing all of that at once. So here you can use that simile, like here Arjun sees that entire creation as a huge body, as a huge being, and everything that happens in creation is happening in that one huge being, or supreme, right? So like I said, this this is something that you would experience when you go beyond the multiplicity, beyond all that you see, into that, and you transcend duality into that oneness. Okay, so now to see that everything is that one being, and to be able to see everything in that one being, you need a special vision. Okay, so all these names and forms that we have in creation, on the macrocosmic level, it's called Virat, the physical, the Virat Roop. So Virat is the Sanskrit term for the macrocosm where everything, the sum total of everything is the Virat. So you can see that Virat Roop. If you have a special vision, if you have the divine eyes, you'll be able to see that creation as one, all within one supreme thing. And this chapter is called Vishva Rupa. Now, Vishva Rupa actually stands more for the microcosm, but here it says Vishwa Rupa, but it's the same thing. The Vishwa Rupa or the Virat Rupa, it is, Arjun basically sees, or is given the blessing or the grace to be able to see the entire creation within this being, the supreme being, where Sri Krishna loses this personality that he is, and he becomes this huge, magnificent being or creation within which Arjun is able to see everything happening. Okay? Now, this vision to be able to see everything in that one happens naturally as a person evolves. Okay? But because Arjun is not there yet, he has not evolved, he has not gain the third eye, so to say. He does not have the subtle visions, he cannot see through the subtle layers. He has not transcended duality. He cannot see the oneness. So here Sri Krishna graces him with that because of his devotion, because of his sincerity of pursuing the truth, and all the whatever qualifications he felt. It's a blessing and a grace from Sri Krishna to be able to give him that vision, to be able to see Krishnaji's supreme cosmic form, and to be able to see the subtle and the subtlest. Okay, so to be able to see the subtle aspects and the subtlest aspects, like I said, it usually comes naturally as you evolve. The more you detach yourself from the material, the more and more you detach yourself from the material, the more and more you can start seeing the subtle and the subtler and the subtlest. So a person who is very focused on the physical layer is generally not very aware of the subtle things, like feelings, about being able to observe their thoughts, or being able to identify with these subtle aspects. But as a person evolves, when they evolve to a subtler level and a deeper subtler level and to the subtlest level, when they are able to evolve, whether it's through meditation or spiritual practices or developing these virtues, once you can access your own subtle layers, you are able to see that same subtleness in other people as well as in creation. Are you with me so far, what I'm saying? So basically, once you yourself evolve and you can see your own subtle layers, that you are, then you can see those subtle layers in other people also, and you can see it in all of creation. But because Arjun has not evolved to that level, he is being graced by Sri Krishna to be able to see his cosmic form. There are some very nice things in this chapter. One is that the definition of Ishwar is given with 6 qualities. So when Sri Krishna shows him this supreme form, that huge Virat Rupa or Vishva Rupa, it is basically what you're seeing is that Ishwar, that one Purusha or Ishwar you're seeing. Now, that Ishwar, or you can say God, it translates to God, but the definition of Ishwar is given here in this chapter and the commentary by Swami Chinmayanand as having 6 qualities. So it is omnipotence, strength, infinite wisdom, virtue, splendor, and extreme dispassion. So these are the 6 qualities of Ishwar that are given here when we talk through the verses and we talk about, Ishwar is the one within which everything is seen. Okay, now also, of course, Sri Krishna is showing him this form, right, the Ishwar. But also, what is happening is that Arjun is also seeing Krishnji first time in this form, because till now he always knew Arjun as as a friend, as a relative, as somebody almost his equal. But this is the first time when Arjun will see his magnificent form, this huge being. And so the first time is when Arjun will address Krishnji as Yogishwar, the Lord of Yoga. And you will see how much reverence he will have for Krishnji in this chapter when he sees this cosmic form of his. And so you'll see the amount of devotion and reverence that Arjun shows for Sri Krishna in this chapter. And how did this happen, right? So, after listening to the 10th chapter, Arjun says, okay, I want to see that form of yours that you talk about, that this supreme that pervades everything. I want to see that supreme, I want to see that universal form. So please show it to me. He requests him, please show it to me. And then from that point onwards, once Krishnji transforms into this huge cosmic form, from then onwards, you will see these verses where the narration shifts to Arjun and Sanjay. Sanjay is in the courtroom. So the battle is taking place, right, Kurukshetra. But Sanjay is there with Dhritarashtra, the blind father of the Kauravas. And Sanjay is the person who's narrating what's happening on the battlefield. Because now, Krishnji is evolved into the supreme being, so he's not necessarily going to talk now. It is all about narration, narrating as to what is happening in the supreme being, what is Arjun seeing. So the narration shifts to these two people, Arjun and Sanjaya. And from verses 6 to 9, you will read that, how it's described, how, Sanjaya describes this to Dhritarashtra, that all the forms, all the beings, all the loks, all the dimensions, all the moving and unmoving, the sentient and unsentient beings, and everything else, everything is there in this huge being that Arjuna is observing. So like I said, it's like observing the whole body, your whole body at one go. There's so much happening in your body, and you're seeing that whole thing happening inside there. So it's like that, it's a vision of the entire creation and everything happening over there. So like I said, the verse 10, the scene shifts to Hastinapur, and Sanjay is explaining the scene to Dhritarashtra, and he's actually giving him a hint also. He's telling Dhritarashtra indirectly, you see, Krishnji is actually Ishwar, he's the Lord, and Ishwar, or the Supreme, is with Arjun. He's with the Pandavas, right? So it's a hint to Dhritarashtra. See, when God himself is with the Pandavas, how can your own sons win the battle? So, the battle has not started yet. But Sanjay is his last ditch effort to try and show him that when the Lord is on Pandav's side, you should realize there's no way that your sons will win. They will die. Perhaps that he should stop the war even last minute, even here, if it's possible. That he may stop the war and say, okay, let's put the halt to this war. But of course, Dhritarashtra is blind, not physically also, but in his intellect also he's blind. So he doesn't pay heed to what Sanjay is telling him. And so then, it's very nice, it's the poetry of Vedvyas, and the words that are used here is very beautiful, how the whole picture is painted. It's very difficult to paint this picture of a supreme being of all of creation, to be able to express it in words. So Sanjay paints this picture, of the universal cosmic form. So he says, it's like this 10,000 suns of brilliance, this light of consciousness. It's so brilliant. It's not physical light, but it's this light of consciousness that is emanating from this being. It's like 10,000 suns of brilliance. And it has infinite parts, infinite things, innumerable things that are there. And he's describing Arjun's, wonderment, how amazed Arjun is looking at this form. He's so awestruck, that Sri Krishna has transformed into this infinite being of infinite things, this Virat Rup. And it's no longer this personality Krishna. He's become all of creation. And this is when Arjun realizes, and he's experiencing this universal oneness. This is the experience that Sri Krishna wanted to give him. Experiential, perception, that he can see for himself this universal oneness that is there in all of creation. And at this point, in the first when Krishnji transforms into this universal being, he is of the Narayan Rup, of the Vishnu Rup. Okay, so when he first transforms, he's got these, the Vishnuji's got 4 four arms, and it's symbolic, but he's carrying four things, and it Swami Chinmaya it tells us what these four things mean, right? So first is a lotus. So the lotus represents peace, joy, auspiciousness, and happiness. One thing, but it represents detachment as well, and basically when you blossom fully, that also is represented by the lotus, but also peace and joy and auspiciousness and happiness. Now the conch that he holds is a call to the individual. Is a call, you blow the conch. It's a call for an individual to perform his duty. That's what the conch stands for. And then, basically, what that does is, it's not just a call to duty, it's like a wake up call. Okay? So, Vishnu takes avatar generation after generation, age after age, to wake up people, to listen to their higher, their higher self, to the call that is within them, to find out what their true nature is. Right? It is to restore dharma. And what is dharma of an individual? What is your true nature? Your true nature is your divine self, your Atman, right? It is a call for you to remember your true nature. So that is what the conch is for, right? So when things become very chaotic and dharma drops, the conch is blown. The conch is blown for you to wake up. Now the club that he holds in his hand, it symbolizes discipline, to discipline people, to bring them into, if their people are undisciplined or something, he brings discipline within people. And even after all of this punishment, so you've called them to, the conch is blown, where you are told to wake up and find out what your true nature is, and then you are given this sort of the mace, the club that he holds in his hand is like to put you in line, it's sort of the stick to make you disciplined. And even after that, if there are people who do not listen, who do not get disciplined, then the final thing is the discus, the Sudarshan Chakra. So it's like this wheel, this tooth wheel that he holds in his right hand, which is always revolving. And that revolution is like the Kal Chakra. It's a whirling of time. And time annihilates everything, right? Time is a lot of focus in this chapter on time. Time essentially stands for the creation, sustenance, and destruction aspects. So with time, everything is annihilated, right? So if there is people who are irredeemable, who do not want to change, they will be annihilated by time. So the Sudarshan Chakra stands for that time that annihilates those who do not want to change. Okay? So that's the symbol. So he's standing there, he's got this, he can see this huge form of this Vishnu with these things, and everything is happening within that form that he's seeing. So while Arjun is watching this, what he is experiencing is that the substratum for the entire creation is the same transcendental principle. It is one being within which everything is happening, right? So he sees that the substratum is the same eternal truth, right? The eternal truth, the transcendental principle, that is a substratum of everything. Now, what is everything? Everything includes good, bad, ugly, demons, devatas, the gross, the subtle, everything, right? No matter what it is, whether it's demons or devatas, whether it's good or bad, whether it's good people, bad people, whether it's death or birth, everything is part of creation. And the transcendental principle, the divinity, shines through all of them. See, what happens usually is we only think of good things as divine. We never think that, oh, how can demons be part of God, or how can demons be part of this, this divine principle, or the or consciousness, right? How can demons be part of this? No. See, in Advait Vedant, in that if everything is one, if everything is this one being, if everything is that supreme being, then everything is part of it. You don't say, oh, demons are something which are outside of it. If God is omnipresent, if God is omnipotent, how can there be anything outside of that? Everything is within it. And that is what he's experiencing. What is Arjun seeing here? Arjun is seeing everything as part of it. The demons are also the demons, the Rakshas, the Asuras, the Devatas, the good, the bad, the death and birth, everything is there within that one being. Okay? Okay, so that is the scene here. Now, one of the things is the question on, okay, how would you realize that supreme being? I mean, of course, here Arjun is shown the supreme being, right? But how would you and I ever experience that self, that supreme? So that something that is mentioned here in the commentary is that supreme or that self is self-shining. Nothing can illuminate it. It is like the sun. There's nothing that can illuminate the sun. The sun is self-illuminating. You simply have to experience it. You simply have to get to a point where you become that witness, where that you are basically, you are the sun. So nothing can illumine the sun, right? So here what is being said is that whether it's a supreme being or your own self, the way to experience this, the way Arjun is experiencing it, is for you yourself to come to a point where you experience yourself. And when you experience yourself, it will not be something separate. You will feel that you are that supreme being. There is no division. It's not like, yourself and the supreme being, there is any wall or distance between it. There's no distance between it. There's nothing between it. The moment you experience your own self, that very moment you will experience this supreme being. So what does that mean? And I've spoken to people, who've had these experiences of oneness. What happens is, when you have this experience of yourself, Atma Darshan, when you have this expanded sense of awareness, what happens is everything seems like, that you have become everything, that you have become the totality, and everything is within you. So this is things that I have spoken to people about. It's not some far-fetched idea. It is real. It does happen. And many saints, living saints, also have experienced this totality. So it's not that they feel small anymore, that they're separate anymore. Once they experience the self, they become that totality. They become that consciousness, that supreme being. But here Arjun is simply being shown what that experience would be like. Okay? So it cannot be perceived or felt or known. It is the knower, the feeler, and the perceiver. Okay? So that is what is said there. So again, going back, this Vishva Rupa, okay, is this like this Purusha. If you read the Purusha Suktam, it is very similar to that. How in the Purusha Suktam it describes how creation comes about and how everything is within this great Purusha. Everything is there. So all of this description is there. It's very similar to the Purusha, the Vishwa Rupa. Okay. So in this Purusha, there are all the beings are there, right? So it talks about the Siddhas, the Rishis, the Devatas, and it mentions how the Devatas are kneeling in front and they're praying to the Supreme Being, they are in fear. So the devatas are distinctly different from the siddhas and the rishis. So it describes how the siddhas and the rishis, they have no fear. They're simply singing. They're singing for the benefit of creation. They're singing they're saying, may all be well, swasti, swasti. Basically, may all be well, may all be well. Whereas the devatas, they still fear death. Okay, this is an important point to note, that even though they are devatas, we are simply human, so we obviously have fear of death. But even devatas have fear. And because of that fear, they pray. They are praying to this great Purusha, or this Vishva Rupa. And so, all the beings are there, right? All these beings are shown in this great being that is encompassing. Now, all of these, beings which are shown, the Siddhas, Rishis, Devatas, and so forth, they're in different loks. So, within this grand form, within this cosmic form, not just the physical aspect of the universe, but all the loks are there. From here to Brahmalok, all the loks are shown. So, all the beings that reside in these different dimensions, they're all displayed within this cosmic form that Arjuna is seeing. The other thing is, it is not just all the dimensions, but is also the past, present, and future is all being shown simultaneously. It's like as if everything is happening now. Okay, it is not sequential or linear. Okay, so he can see, so basically he's being shown the future as well. So he can see all these. Now at this point what happens is, the Vishnu Rupa transforms, okay, into a different form where there's fire coming out of the mouth, and it's a little more scary form. It's another the form has transitioned now to a form which is quite fierce in the sense that death is shown, and this cosmic being has this fire coming out of the mouth, and all these people are dying and entering into this mouth of death. So a lot of death is shown. Okay, so he can see, the Kauravas, Bhishma Pitama, Drona, all these people, they're entering into that mouth of fire and dying. So he's given that, the future, he's shown the future. And one of the reasons why he's shown this is to tell Arjun that whether you do your duty or you don't do your duty, this is going to happen anyway. It is the wheel of time. They're all, like he said in the second chapter, they're dead already. So you're simply being an instrument. You're just a player. You're just a puppet almost. I mean, in the wheel of time, this is going to happen. This is determined anyway. So he shows him the future of what is happening. So all of this past, present, and future, he's showing that happens simultaneously. The birth, the youth, the old age, the death, everything can be seen happening now, okay? As well as the creation, the sustenance, and the destruction. You can see that all happening simultaneously at the same time. Just like nature, right? So in nature what happens? All of this is happening, but we see it in a linear way, right? But in nature, you see death also happening, birth also happening. So it is like that, it's like watching nature in fast motion, everything happening simultaneously. So this is
question. So can you take this to our? Can we take this example in today's world, and we can understand that? Can we understand from this that the future has already been predetermined, right? So is that what's the learning from this? Like the future is already predetermined. All we are just puppets in this world, and we are playing that music, or like, how should we think about it?
The way we should think about it is, and I was just going to say that, so what we need to do is, we need to be in rhythm with that nature. And when we are in rhythm with nature, and with time, or dharm, and dharm's other name is rit. Dharm and rit, that's another Sanskrit word for dharm is rit. Rit means truth. So when we are in sync with that, then everything will happen per time. Time is the greatest master of what is going to happen. So when we are not in sync with it, we are miserable. Like Arjun, he's not in sync with what's going to happen anyway. It was predetermined. But he's not in sync with it. He's not in rhythm with it. If you're in rhythm with the time, if you're in rhythm with nature, like animals, they are in rhythm with nature. They don't decide, they don't have free will, nothing. They eat on time, they sleep on time, they never overeat, they never oversleep. They're always in rhythm with their dharma. Everything is in rhythm. If you look at nature, in spring plants will come up, in fall they will die. So if you look at nature, everything follows a rhythm. So it is only humans who have been given the free will not to be in rhythm with nature. So dharma and nature, you can think of it like same. So it's only human beings amongst all creatures, plants, sun, anything which is on the planet, in fact anything which is in nature, even the galaxies, everything is in rhythm with nature, with time. That is called dharma, the truth. So when you are in rhythm with that, what is meant to happen will happen. What when we are not in rhythm, we create this karma, we create misery for ourselves, and we want to change things from what would be optimum. So optimum, it doesn't mean that there will be no death. There will be death, but there will be death without misery. There will be death without suffering. So if you realize, if you can see, that is why Arjun is shown that anyway everyone is going to die. So when you can understand this concept of nature, how nature functions, and you observe nature and you realize that this is the cycle of nature, the point is for him to transcend that fear of death. Finally, all fear is fear of death. And everything will happen. Now, one thing, everything of the future is not predetermined. So what happens is, certain things are predetermined, certain things are probabilities. The reason why they are probabilities is because you have so many free wills on the planet. So everybody has a choice they can make. So for example, it's very hard to let me tell you for your individual self, right? Now supposing for you, there are multiple timelines, that can happen. Now this is not covered in this chapter. I'll just tell you, this is outside the scope of this. It never talks about this in this chapter, but I'll just tell you, certain things are going to happen no matter what. Okay, that's per Hinduism also, per karma. Certain things will happen. Certain things are a probability depending on what you are deciding and choosing right now. So it is like you have 5 things which are a probability for the future. And as you decide and choose, that one probability becomes more probable. Means the percentage of the probability goes up, the others will go down. Now you can switch your mind anytime, and the timeline will, it's like these paths, these 5 misty paths through a forest. And as you choose and as you decide and use your free will, one misty path will become clearer, the others will still stay misty. But you can always switch sometime, and from there more paths will open up. Like from there more paths will open up, from there more paths will open up. And as you choose, a certain thing will become more probable. So that is, if you lived alone on this planet and no one else is there, that is your probability for the future. But what happens is, other people's free wills are also affecting yours. Like if you have parents, you have wife and children, and there's a collective, you live in a city, you live in a country, you live in the world. So this combination and permutation becomes very, very complicated. So you cannot, like, even like if you go for a job interview, the free will of the person who's interviewing you plus your own free will, and everybody else involved, their free wills, everybody's interacting. So they are also choosing, you are also choosing. But certain things which are predetermined because of past karma, which are called prarabdha, if there it has to happen, it will happen no matter what. And things will fall into place like that, where it will happen no matter what. You can struggle, you can try, like somebody is sick and you try hundreds of medicines, hundreds of healings, but when if the person is, it's predetermined that this person will experience this, they will experience it. Nothing will can change, from that. So certain things are certain for sure. In this case, in this scenario, Kaurav's dying and all of this was predetermined, that this yuga has to end, these bad people have to end for sure, this will happen. So that is why he's seeing all these people entering into the mouth of death. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think it completely makes sense. I think it also reinforces some of the earlier things that you mentioned, reinforces what we learned in previous chapters around total surrender as well. When you live in the rhythm, you're totally surrendering yourself. Is that the right way?
Correct.
So then
Yeah.
then you are in the rhythm. If you're surrendering, then there's no ego.
Yes.
And then you are basically in the rhythm. You are in your blissful state anyway.
Yes.
In a way.
Exactly.
I'm connecting all these dots.
Yes, exactly. So if you live in surrender, and it'll come later on also here, and even in this chapter, it talks about surrender, how the basic idea of showing you everything, how nature is working, how the whole cosmos is working. When you have this amazing vision, when it's really amazing. There have been moments in my life also, where I've had this experience. And when you see this whole thing and you become just a witness to it, simply you become a witness to it, and everything becomes a happening. It's not, you're just flowing in this big machinery type of thing, it's amazing. It's like a big carnival, and you're watching this huge carnival that's happening, and everything is just happening. But when we don't live in surrender, we function from our mind, from our ego level. We interfere with nature, we interfere with the design, we try to change things. And that is, when you interfere with the design, when you interfere with nature, you will only cause consequences. There will be consequences for that. There will be side effects. That's the whole thing. So here, this more fierce form is shown to Arjun, and it is the reason why he's shown this is that he's shown that how everybody has to die, everything is merging back into the unmanifest. So it's created, it's maintained, and it gets destroyed, it merges back into the unmanifest, and the cycle continues. And then you can, once you understand this, you won't have fear. You will see everything is cyclical. Even after you die, you will be born again. So when you see everything happening in the now, you will realize that existence is permanent. Your existence is permanent. That is the right definition of Sat, because the way Atma is described is Sat, Chit and Anand. Sat is translated as truth. Truth is that which does not change. And if you really think about that which does not change, is existence itself. The existential principle is never changing. So, like this cosmic being, everything exists. It simply transforms from one form to another form to another form. It's like energy, which is never created or destroyed, but it changes, It changes from one to the next, but the energy in its totality never changes. So the total energy in the universe is constant, right? But it It can change forms, it can change shapes, names, forms, go back to energy, then come back into matter, then go back into energy, so forth. But total energy or existence stays constant. That is Sat. That is the right definition of Sat. So he's shown this, how permanent existence is, and everything else is temporary. And when he sees this in wonderment, this amazing, if you had to experience this, can you imagine what you would feel like if you had to actually see this in person, where Krishnji has become this huge, enormous being, and you're seeing all of creation, past, present, future, all beings, all dimensions, all death, life, this, that, infinity, infinite amount of things, and you're witnessing this. He's so overwhelmed, he is so overwhelmed, and he drops to his knees and he folds his hands and he starts to sing a prayer to Krishnji as a Lord, as a Supreme Lord. And it's such a beautiful prayer, from verse 37. There's 11 verses from verse 37 onwards. And if you read this prayer, it's one of the best written prayers in Sanatan Dharma ever. It's a beautiful composition by Ved Vyas. It's so full of devotion, it's so full of reverence, it's so descriptive, it's so full, his heart is so full. It's very difficult to write such things, and that's the mastery of Ved Vyas, that he's been able to capture this in words. So this devotion, this outpouring of devotion of Arjun, is how he has. So devotion itself is, when you identify with the self, when you identify with the Atman, when you identify with this supreme cosmic being, when you identify with it, that is devotion. Okay, most people think of devotion as duality. It is not duality. I'm a Krishna Bhakt, right? So when I identify with Krishna, that closeness that you feel, that oneness that you feel with the one. I mean, here, ultimately, devotion is the devotion that you have, or the closeness that you have, the identification that you have with your own self, your Atma. That is devotion. Because everything else is just a symbol for it, it's just a intermediary thing for it. Like say, I'll just give you my example, right? So I have a lot of devotion for Krishna, but really it's not Krishna. It is the consciousness. It's not him as a personality. What my longing for ultimately is to merge into that consciousness. And that consciousness and my consciousness is one thing. So devotion is ultimately when the ego identifies with consciousness and wants to merge into that consciousness, that is devotion. Okay? So here, when Arjun is identifying with this supreme cosmic form, he has totally merged into this vision. He has become one with it. And that is where this devotion, outpouring of devotion comes out. Okay, and this is how this chapter transitions from this to the next chapter is on Bhakti Yoga. So these last few verses are a good transition into the next chapter. So, basically, like I said, he says this prayer, these 11 verses, full of devotion. And then Krishnji enumerates. He's then finally it's Krishnji. He tells Krishnji like, okay, please renounce your form, your fierce form. Please come back to your previous form, because this bhayankar form it's scaring me. I'm trembling. I'm feeling weak. So then Krishnji says okay, and he comes back to his more softer form, the Vishnu form again. And then he speaks to him. He speaks to Arjun. Shri Krishna, Bhagwan Shri Krishna speaks to him from that expanded state. And he talks also of the 5 qualities that a person has to have to gain that cosmic self. So how do you attain that cosmic self? And so Krishnji says that that these are the 5 qualities, and one quality will lead to the next quality. So the first quality is service. Okay, the first quality is service, service to others. Now, when you say service to others, service to God, it's the same thing. Here it says service to Ishwar. But Ishwar is not a person. So, service to Ishwar means, now what is Ishwar? Ishwar is everything, right? This is what is described in this chapter, that Ishwar is everything, that oneness, all of creation is Ishwar. So if you want to do service, it means service to everything, to everyone equally. So now you have seen the Vishva Rupa. Service to that Vishwarup, service to that Ishwar is your starting point, Karma Yoga, right? Now, service to Ishwar by serving others is the first quality. That will lead to you realizing that your goal is to reach Ishwar or achieve that Ishwarhood, right? So your goal becomes Ishwar now. So you transition from service to Ishwar, and when you serve Ishwar, you realize that this is what my goal is, right? So the second virtue that you develop is that your goal becomes Ishwar. And when your goal becomes Ishwar, you will become very devoted to this goal, right? So your efforts, whether it's spiritual practices, it's service, it's devotion, it's knowledge, or whatever, you will feel how every pursuit in life will become the pursuit of Ishwar. That will become your goal, and you will be totally devoted to that goal. So there'll be no compartments in your life, this is my job life, this is my spiritual life, this is my family life, nothing like that. Everything will become sacred because you're so devoted to that goal. Everything will become as though that is what your final destination is, and you will be in that attitude of service in all the compartments of life. So you'll become devoted to that goal. Okay, then that, what will that do? Your attachments to worldly things will drop. That is what you will attain next. You will serve from a level of dispassion. You will not work for attaining or always attaining something. You will attain, but you will not be attached. Even if you have everything, you will not be attached. So that is the next virtue you will achieve, is that all the attachments to worldly things will drop. Okay, and then you will attain yourself. The more detached you become to the world, and the more attached you become to the self, finally the attachment to the material drops, and finally the attachment to the self, the merging into yourself, is accomplished. And once you attain yourself, the final thing is, as the self, now that you have become that cosmic self, that Vishwarup yourself, then you will see yourself in everyone. There's no enemies. You will have no enemies because you are everything. You have become everything. Okay? So those are the 5 steps of step by step. How do you become that cosmic self? Okay? So that is what I wanted to cover. So we started late. So if you have questions, you can ask me. We have 10 minutes we can cover. It's a very easy chapter. It's a very beautiful chapter. Like I said, these 2 chapters, 10 and 11, they're more about bhakti, that as you know it, than chapter 12. When we read chapter 12, you realize it's not so much about bhakti.
Vinita, I have a question. Here.
Yeah, Seema?
So is mentioned before, but serving family is also service because you are serving God's children, right?
Yeah, service means you don't expect anything in return.
But then, isn't it important to go beyond your family also? I mean, a lot of people don't want to go beyond the family, want to live in their own world because they are serving there also.
No,
So what
yeah,
is it
it's
that
not like that, basically your whole life should be service. You don't distinguish between, my family, other people. No, you should live with an attitude of service all the time. Even when you're at work, even if you're working for a salary, you can only be happy in life. I'm telling you, if you don't come with this attitude, you will judge people, you will expect from people. If people don't behave the way you want, you'll get angry with them. If you come from a level of service, that doesn't mean that you let people use you, and you don't ask for a raise or nothing like that. But it's an attitude of service, means you have compassion, in your heart. You're not expecting things from people. You still follow dharma, you're still skillful, you're still following your dharma, all of that is there, but you're living from a attitude of service.
Vinita ji,
Mm-hmm. Vinita is fine.
for these five qualities, I was going through that chapter 12. Is it the same thing from verse 2 to 6? These are the same thing, no, which you are talking.
Verse
Just from
2
the
to
five,
6.
verse 2nd to 6th,
Which chapter?
chapter 12.
Chapter 12, no, chapter 12 starts with the 13th verse, right? So, chapter 12, verse number 12 is the summary of Bhakti Yoga. Okay. So, if you open, let
I'm
me.
talking about verse number 2 to 6 or 7.
Okay, I'll read chapter 12, verse number 2. Okay, hold on. So, verse number 2 of Bhakti Yoga, in my opinion, those who are fixing their mind on me, no, 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 no. This is nothing to do with that. See, verse number 2 in Bhakti Yoga, chapter 12, verse number 2, in my opinion, those who fixing their mind upon me worship me ever steadfast. This is
So in
describing
6 it
meditation.
says about the karma, giving the karma, even giving that to him.
No,
Karma.
no, it's not. It's not. It's not. I'll explain to you. It's a ladder of. This is called the ladder of devotion. So, number 2 describes the highest devotion, which is meditation actually. Okay, so what will happen in chapter 12 is it'll start with the highest. Like I told you, devotion is identifying with the self. So, that's the highest form of devotion where you identify with yourself, means your own consciousness. That is chapter 12, verse number 2, which is basically meditation. Highest form of devotion is meditation, because only in meditation do you identify with the self. Then in verse number 3, 4, 5, 6, he will say, okay, not everybody can identify with the self. They're not there yet, So he says, okay, if you can't do that, then do this. If you can't do this, then do this. If you can't do this, okay, do this. At least do this. So finally he says, drop the anxiety. That's finally where he ends. And he says, no matter what you do, even if you have knowledge, it is no point having knowledge if you still have anxiety.
Okay.
So drop the anxiety. So in verse number 12 is where he will summarize everything. It's a little confusing, that verse, but if you read verse 12, we'll do it next time. But when you read verse 12, we'll summarize all the previous verses, 2 to 11.
But then these five qualities which you are saying now, they are covered under which verses then?
Oh, it's in chapter. Let me 1 second. It's I don't remember exactly which verse it is. It's chapter 11. I'll email you. It's one of the last verses. One of the last verses where he says, these five qualities. I'll get back to you. I don't remember exactly. So yeah.
I was just trying to read and understand, trying to link what you were saying. So
Yeah. 1 second, I'll tell you. The last verse, 55.
Right, that mat karma krunna
Correct.
paramo
Yes.
bhaktam sanjavargita. Okay.
Yes, mat karma. Yeah, the one that's that with
bhakti.
yeah, mat karma does actions for me. Mat karma kriti, means the one who does actions for me. So that is service to Ishwar.
Okay.
Mat karma krit. That is the first virtue.
Right. First virtue.
Yeah.
Okay, I will also try to understand you. Can I got the idea. I was figuring out, so I was jump to the next. I was
It's,
figuring it out.
this chapter, let me see, I had highlighted some things. There was a little bit of learning I did in this chapter, which I hadn't noticed before actually. Not learning in that sense, there were certain definitions which were given, which were very nice. If you read it, certain definitions which were very clearly given. It was nice to read. So if you read the commentary, you get so much out of it.
Yeah.
But do read the prayer. The prayer is beautiful. That Arjun says.
Uh-huh.
It's very nice.
And what verses are the prayers in?
The prayer starts with verse number 37. It's for 11 verses.
Okay, 37.
Yeah. Let me see whatever else I highlighted here. There's another. So Mahayogeshwar, the great Lord of Yoga. Now, in Chinmaya Mission or in a lot of Sanatan Dharmis, they will always say Harihi Om, right? Not Hari. It's not Hari, okay? Hari has a total different meaning. The right, if you see how it's written, it's Harihi. Harihi, okay? Not Hari. Hari is wrong. Don't say it. In Sanskrit, if you pronounce it incorrectly, even a half sound, it can be opposite meaning also. So be careful. So Harihi, Harihi is the definition here is given as the one who maintains the champions of truth by destroying the powers of falsehood. That is Krishna. This is so beautiful because I used to wonder, why in Chinmaya Mission they always keep saying Harihi Om, Harihi Om. Why every prayer ends with Harihi Om, right? So why is it? Because you remember he says he destroys dharma and he destroys adharma and he restores dharma. That is the meaning of Harihi. Harihi is the great being or the principle, the God principle that upholds the truth and destroys the falsehood. That is the meaning of Harihi. It's very nice. So you should remember that because we should know some basic things. Like if somebody asks you, what does Harihi mean? It's not a name of somebody. It's not a title. It's the meaning. The God principle which restores dharma and destroys adharma is Harihi. So that's why you say Harihi Om. Okay.
Very nice. Otherwise, colloquially, it is only Hari.
No, that's what, it's very bad. People pronounce verses the wrong way, and sometimes it's completely the opposite. And yeah, there's a much deeper meaning actually. That ending sound is so important. The Hari, Hi, that last sound is very, that I'll just tell you, just short. Swaha or Harihi, that last sound. So the first Hari is the gross, okay? The last sound is the transcendental sound. Okay, so just remember that. It's very important.
Oh, the same thing in that Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha. That instead of Swaha, that pronunciation also is a problem.
Swaha. Swaha. So that aha, the aha sound, and there's one more. Namaha.
Namaha.
There's two sounds which are like that. Gosh, I'm totally blanking out. There are two sounds where mantras will always end in one or the other. One is Harihi or Her, let Swaha. There are two sounds which take you to the transcendental. I can't remember the other one. But that's why the aha is very important. Okay. If you don't have any more questions, we can end.
Last question. This is
Yeah.
a little away from our normal discussion.
Uh-huh.
In US, is there any issue with which teaches basic Sanskrit, say online or something like that. Not very difficult, but it's simple uh, to get these nuances. Yes.
Oh, there's so many. There's so many online. Actually, Chinmaya Mission
So
also
you
has an
can
online
recommend
course.
something maybe for future we can just think of.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually went through Sanskrit, but unless you practice it, you forget. There's Sanskrit Bharati here in the Bay Area where you can take a class. There's online classes, gazillion online classes.
Okay.
I always recommend that you go to Chinmaya. The reason being that
Okay.
they have such thorough knowledge of Sanskrit, and they present it in a very simple form. So you get the depth also, but it's comes to you in a non-scholarly way, in a simple way that you can learn it. So
That is
they,
important.
yeah, so they have an online course, and I have a friend actually who took it, and he really liked it.
Okay. Thanks a lot. I think.
Okay,
Okay.
we will talk again on